hold music. You want to avoid it, and so do your customers. So say goodbye to hold music and hello to faster, smarter support with Salesforce. Make service more personal and agents more productive using built-in trusted AI. Then watch costs and wait times drop and satisfaction soar. Support customers in a whole new way with Service GPT. Learn how at salesforce.com/servicegpt.
Welcome to the nature-backed podcast of Single Earth. In this series, we are talking with investors about their visions of the new green world. My name is Tarmo Virki, and in this episode I am talking at Latitude 59 Startup Conference with Isabel Fox from Outsized Ventures. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Hey there! I hope you're enjoying the Nature-Backed podcast. I'm Merit, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Single Earth, and we're a team of more than 70 people building a nature-backed economy. And if that sounds crazy enough for you, then join us. Sign up at single.earth to be among the first to get access to our nature-backed tokens. And let's talk more on our Earth Savers Discord channel. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, Isabel. Thanks for finding time for us at the Nature-Backed podcast.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a few words about Outsized Ventures.
Yeah, so we founded last year, so this is our first fund. 3 partners based out of London, actually one in Lisbon. And our whole remit is deep tech, so trying to back founders that are going to have a big impact on the world for the better. And we believe a lot of that will come from science, technology-led businesses. We back companies at Seed Plus, so we're a bit different to everyone else. We're not coming in on the usual rounds. We like to come in between rounds, get to know founders when they're sort of at pre-seed and seed. And then essentially, when we get conviction that they're a 1% founder with a big opportunity, that's when we like to invest. Mm-hmm. And that's across, I guess our main areas would be food, life sciences, but not therapeutics, healthcare, sustainability, clean tech. And then we like things, which have like compute power, quantum, edge, which can sit across sort of multiple different sectors, but we think will have a big impact.
What's this Seed Plus round?
Yeah, it's quite unusual, isn't it? It's kind of anywhere between a week after seed to a week before Series A. Essentially, we just give ourselves more time to get more data set on a founder. So at seed and pre-seed, we're trying to identify who we think are the top 10% founders doing interesting stuff. And then we typically like to sort of, have regular conversations, interactions with them, see how they're developing, how their team is growing, how they execute on the plan. And once we get conviction that we actually think that we're a 1% founder and we want to back them, we kind of move very, very quickly then to see if we can put an investment in of sort of anywhere typically of 1.5 to 2.5 million. So we're often creating rounds, but the founders we want are the ones that don't need us and don't want us, where we're kind of having to persuade them that actually, we can help and they should take our money.
It's probably that time now in, approaching mid-2020 and looking at the world economy, there are probably more and more people who actually look for capital between the rounds, right?
I think so. My theory is that even the really good deep tech companies in Europe, they're not getting as much funding as the US, and they're on quite a tight seed typically to get to the inflection points for Series A. So, I think, most founders are quite open to taking a little bit more cash. And I think the world as it's heading at the moment, there won't be that many boards that will say, no, don't take an extra 1-2 million at this stage. So I hope actually the timing is going to work quite well for us because there's some brilliant founders out there. And I think the market is going to get tougher. So hopefully we can help those realize their ambitions.
Mm. The 1 year into the fund, how many investments you've made already?
Yeah, so we actually only we did our first close just before Christmas. And we've done 3 investments since January.
Not rushing it.
No, definitely not. For us, it's it's a fairly concentrated portfolio. The model's 25 companies, which isn't a huge amount in this venture game. So it's very much for us about getting conviction around the opportunity, the founder, and also making sure that the valuation we're going in at is the right valuation.
Turning a little bit more towards the kind of main topic of the podcast series, deep tech and environment. How much you're seeing the kind of traction in the kind of any climate or environment related deep tech startups?
Yeah, I think there's lots, as you know. I think that's driven partly by, I don't think people want to work at Google or Twitter anymore. And actually, I think as we were discussing before this podcast started, I think people want to do stuff that's going to have a purpose and an impact. So you're finding, I think, more and more great talent wanting to address some of the world's greatest challenges we have. So I think, that's the first thing. You're seeing more founders wanting to find solutions to our problems. So we're definitely seeing an increase in fabulous people trying to work through, whether that's carbon counting, whether it's, sustainability projects which they think can get off the ground. And you're definitely seeing a lot of academics and obviously the research coming through as well as to different solutions for various things, whether that be fusion or using space to improve our own planet.
The space is something which has also popped up on many environment projects recently.
Yeah, we're seeing lots. Everything from space manufacturing, which I think is super interesting, just what we can produce in space that we can't make down here and what that potential is. Obviously mining and what we could take from the planet. I think just sort of taking more of that out of our own planet and up into space, hopefully would have a benefit to us here.
How do you see the kind of this, how to say, climate emergency having an impact on the kind of startup's mind or maybe investors' mind?
Yeah, look, for me, it's not a trend. It's something we just have to fix. I think it has become trendy, but I think most people that are looking at it from a long-term patient perspective, and that we need to address this. So, I still think more money will come into the area. I don't think we're like at full capacity of what we need to do or where that money will come from. But I think, for now, you're just seeing, for me, it sort of leads with the quality of the founders and the ideas and what we're trying to build. And the money, will be there for great founders, as you know. And I think that's starting to happen. But we need to obviously speed up what we're doing in order to save our planet.
What can be done to speed up?
I think it's everything from policies, which, I think we're starting to see that. The UK is obviously pushing a number of initiatives on regulation. Regulation is obviously one big area that pushes people to have to make a change. Policies, incentives, regulation, government funding into this area. I don't think it's all just going to come from venture capitalists. As we know, this hasn't always been the most returns driven area. So, I think it has to be backed by governments. Corporates need to do more. Us as the general public need to do more.
Yeah, I think also the kind of classical VC investment cycles, the sector is a bit challenging, to put it politely, right?
It is. Like, a lot of it's going to take much longer than a typical fund of a 10 and 2 year type of fund structure. So I think, for me, it is about that joined up approach coming from all different avenues.
Absolutely. The government has, or let's say the governments have been playing key role in the climate actions for quite a while. Is there something more the kind of government level could be done?
I think there's always more.
That's true.
I think we always want more across, whether it's sustainability or health in the UK or whatever it might be. I think we all feel education. There's always more that can be done. I think it is just about setting targets and, you know, forcing some of that change to happen.
Some of the big change happens through big corporations who, a lot of them have made some kind of commitments to become carbon neutral or by 2030 and something like that. My cynical me has been thinking that one of the best business ideas must be to buy up carbon credits and then sell them in 2029 to the big corporations.
When everyone's desperate.
Exactly. There must be the point where, you know, I mean, it always happens the way that people on the last minute understand that they don't actually have enough. So there must be the kind of the market squeeze happening in late 2029, so everybody can tell to their investors that
they hit the target.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think, you know, like you definitely hear from corporates that they're looking at it, but I don't even think many of them actually have a strategy yet. They're working through the plans with the consultants, and actually when you start to look at what the costs will be to go carbon neutral by 2030, you know, they've got to make significant investment to get there, of which, I mean, you know, I'm not, I'm seeing sort of the start, but I'm probably like you, I'm not seeing them make that full big commitment of quite a few hundred millions in some cases to sort of drive that. So I think you will be right. I think there'll be a panic right at the end, and people then wanting to sort of see how they can get out of it rather than necessarily fulfill that obligation.
Fixing the problem, right? And looking at also at the war in Ukraine and how some of the, I don't know, German or French companies especially have been really dragging their feet with getting out of Ukraine, getting out of Russia. I think, you know, it kind of shows that, yes, corporates have very high positive agendas, but, you know, eventually money matters and they are not in a rush to spend, you know, any extra pennies on anything.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with corporates. They're very good at writing a report every year that says about their ESG or their great contribution, but actually on the ground, I think it can be quite different when you're driven by quarterly results, and if you're public listed, obviously the scrutiny of analysts and investors and shareholders. So, you know, for me, it is definitely, you know, the corporates need to do more.
As I mentioned, the Ukraine, Russia's war on Ukraine, Europe has been kind of making decisions or at least being pushed towards decisions towards, you know, energy independence, or at least cutting the cord to Russia. Yeah. Do you think this is having a huge impact on the kind of energy sector startup scene across Europe? Or do you see any of that yet?
It's not a space that we know particularly well. So I'm probably not the best person. I've definitely seen like the startups, you know, that there's a number of sort of fusion startups out of Oxford University. And, you know, I have seen, you know, there's big rounds coming together on those, like seriously big cash going into them, which, and that's a mix of sort of corporate venturing, government as well. And, you know, I do think that some of those projects will get probably more funding than they previously would have done, just because people are starting to look at alternatives and making sort of scenario plans as to how to diversify. So that's my periphery view of what's happening. I don't cover it as much as I probably should, but I've definitely seen, you know, that some of the alternatives in the UK market are starting to get some, you know, fairly substantial funding coming through.
If you, or when you travel these days around European startup events, I'm sure Latitude is not the only one. What do you kind of, touching the pulse of the startup market, what do you see?
Yeah, look, I always love those VCs that have a thesis and can, look into their magic ball and, make predictions. And, I don't necessarily think I'm one of those. I think I'm much more driven by meeting, I think I've got a great muscle memory on what a good founder looks like. So I'm always, when I come to places like this, I'm always really interested in just talking to founders about what problems they're solving, because I think, they're far better at identifying where the opportunities are, what needs to be fixed, and, the ideas that they come up with. So I've been super interested in just, the work around blockchain here, lots around sustainability, metaverse, crypto. It's been fascinating, and you're always learning from great founders as to where markets and where opportunities are going. So, for me, that's the really interesting part of coming and traveling around Europe. And then the other is just meeting other VCs and hearing, what they're interested in, what the market's currently like, and, what's going to be happening over this next 18 to 24 months, because I think, it's definitely going to be a tough time for people on an individual level, but also for the startups and the world that we live in.
Why it's going to be tough times?
I think it's going to be tough for, obviously we've just got so much uncertainty in the world at the moment, as you touched on. The war, supply chains are obviously, a real mess. Inflation's growing. We've obviously had a number of SPACs in the US, and public markets have now come off substantially. And, talking to the US VCs over the last couple of weeks, it's really coming off there. So early stage, not so much. There's less sensitivity around valuation and funding companies, but from Series B upwards, certainly valuations have been coming down. VCs have been, making sure that their own portfolios are well funded to survive 36 months. And cost cutting has started across those big portfolios. So, I think we're probably lagging in here in Europe. I would say we could be a quarter, we maybe even be 2 quarters behind the US and some of that sentiment. But as you know, often it's driven by sentiment rather than actual, often realities. So, I suspect that we're just going to see tougher times ahead. I don't think we're going to see, obviously the Crunchbase data from Q1 showed a slowing down in deep tech investments. It was still, in fact, higher than 2020. It just wasn't, it was down on the 2021 figures. But I suspect that's slowing down from being here, talking to European VCs. Everyone's still investing, but they're just not going to be deploying at the pace that we have been the last 2 years, and going to be even more careful on valuations and who we back, and that starts to have an effect.
Absolutely, step by step.
Yeah. So my advice to founders has been, watch the cash burn. Get prudent on that. Try to increase your runway to 36 months, so you have the luxury of time, and hopefully the world may have stabilized sooner than we think, and we might be able to come out of this.
Is there many startups which have a 36-month runway?
There haven't been. And, talking to the US VCs, some big ones last week, as they were saying, they were seeing portfolios coming out twice in a year to raise money. But even they were saying, they want to see 36 months now of runway, and, companies well funded to be able to survive that long. So that's a big shift, because, I mean, 24 months was a lot. And in the last, in this last sort of couple of years, we've been quite happy to see sort of 12 to 18 months.
Exactly.
So that's the sort of shifts that I think you're seeing, and that's from, top VCs over in the US. I think that's the sort of dialogue we're going to be starting to have here.
What's the positive thing to kind of wrap up, not to kind of finish on a somewhat cautious or negative note.
Yeah, look, good founders will always get funding, and I think being tight, being focused is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
So for me, I always think that it's about being savvy. It's about being prudent and nimble, and great founders will do that. Then they will look at the market conditions. They'll make their plans, decide on what milestones they're going to hit, and probably tighten their belts to get there. But in all honesty, there's plenty of money in the world still, as we know. I think the deep tech is counter-cyclical to probably some of the more riskier e-commerce, consumer-type plays, which will probably get affected more. I think the stuff that we're backing and the stuff that you like is big plays that have a huge impact on the future of society. And, that's not going to change much today. So, for me, actually, in deep tech, I think it's a great time to be investing. We still got the problems in the world. We still need to solve them. And these opportunities are huge that, even if we have a 2-year bad period now in the macro economy, they're going to come through the other side very, very strong.
And the kind of urgency is actually getting, worse day by day. So the need to invest and create the solutions is growing.
Absolutely. And we need them. So, and I think, obviously we get our money from limited partners, whether that's institutions or family offices. And so many people are behind making this change that, I'm truly believing, naively or not, that deep tech is actually a great place to be investing still, obviously from the LP perspective, but also as a GP into the founders that can drive us positive change.
Absolutely. Good. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you.
Join us again for the next episode. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please give us a good rating and leave the feedback in your podcast player so others will find it too. We will be back next week. Turn on to Nature-Backed Podcast.
Do you want to hear your favorite R&B, soul, and throwback music? Well, download the free Autolist app, search for Vibe 95, and click on the icon for the home for R&B, soul, and throwback music, Vibe 95.
Hi, I'm Gina Ann, your tour guide to Adventures to Wisdom podcast. What if you could get answers to your deepest question, reawaken your sense of purpose, and enhance your zest for connections and play? This is what we do on Adventures to Wisdom podcast with real people, and we're inviting you to come with us. We bring you unscripted, raw, inspirational stories, ideas, and intuitive insights.
Electricast.